Okay guys, so we should be live now. I'm just going to set something up quickly before I switch to my screen recorder here. Okay, so we should be live now. I'm switching to my screen recorder and we're in lesson 4 here, week 4. So before we start this, I'm just going to create a new folder in my workspace here. So this is where all of my lessons are for each week. I'm going to right click and new folder here, and I'm going to call this week 4. And I'm going to head inside of it and then open this up in VS Code. So to do this, I'll right click and I'll select open in terminal here. And I'll type the word code and leave a space and put a dot here. So this will open up that folder in VS Code. And I'm just going to head back to the browser here. And I'm going to begin lesson 1. Before I do this, there may be like background sounds and stuff going on here. We're fixing stuff, so yeah, there's builders and stuff here. And I'm just going to turn the audio off, the desktop audio here, so the video playback a bit lower. And yeah, let's start this.
In this first lesson of the JavaScript coding course, we're going to look at how to output text to your web page using JavaScript. To begin with, I've created a little project in brackets, a little folder, and I've put in an index.html and a style.css file. Now, looking at the index.html.
Okay, let's see if they give us the code. No, they don't for the HTML and CSS. But looking at it, there's just an h3 tag and then a p tag. So I'm just going to add that in here. Index.html. Make sure you spell that all correctly. I know some of you have made the mistake of spelling your file name incorrectly or something. But yeah. Once you're inside of the file, you just want to press Shift and the number 1 on your keyboard, and this will give you like an exclamation mark here, and then you press Tab and this will automatically fill out your HTML template. So inside of the body here, I'm going to type H3 and press Tab, and this will automatically give me an H3 tag. And I think he just wrote the word hello here, and then below this he had a p tag. So again I press P and then I press tab to automatically create those tags, and here he wrote the word everyone. So I'm going to save this and let me see what kind of ID he set here. Okay, so the ID is just heading 1 and then paragraph 1. And the ID for the paragraph. And I'll just save this. So he doesn't show us the CSS file here, so I'm not going to create it right now, but it's just for styling anyway, so we don't need to see it.
Well, as you can see, there's nothing fancy. It's a basic bare bones HTML document with your HTML open and close tags, head open and close, and inside the head tags you can see that I've linked to a style sheet called style.css, which you can find inside the folder as well. So you're going to need to do that. Then I've put in the body open and close tags, and
okay, I'm just going to skip ahead a bit.
I'm going to actually remove this text after the test. So I've saved my work and I've run this in the browser. Now let's have a look at the browser. When I open this document.
Okay, let's start up our live server here. I'm going to click on go live at the bottom here. If you don't have this, head to extensions here. Extensions is this last button down here. And in here you want to search for live server. and you want to select this one and just hit install here. And after that you should see go live at the bottom here. So I'm going to click on that and it will open that in my browser. So let's head back to the lesson.
Up in Chrome, you can see everything is perfect. We've got hello and we've got everyone. Now we're going to start coding in JavaScript. The first thing you need to know is that JavaScript always goes in between script tags. So we're going to add a couple of script tags. We're going to add it to the body section of your web page, right just before.
Okay, I'm just going to skip a bit here. And here at the bottom he added script tags. So again, you just type the name of the tag and you press tab. You don't need to manually type out those angle brackets and stuff. It'll just fill it in for you. And now with our cursor in between the two tags, we want to hit enter. And that will create spacing between them so we can put other things in between. And now let's head back to the video and see what he does.
Document dot get element by ID. You can see it's already being hinted here. Brackets is already hinting at me to use get element by ID. You can complete typing or you can just simply click on get element by ID. Get element by ID, open parenthesis, and then put in.
Okay, I'm just going to do it myself and then explain what's happening here. Actually, let's see what he does with this element that he's grabbing.
Inner HTML, you need to put in a semicolon. So JavaScript.
Okay, and here he's talking about the semicolon at the end.
Requires a semicolon at the end of each line.
That's actually not true anymore. In modern JavaScript, it doesn't really matter if you put in that semicolon or not. Some people still do it because they feel it's good practice, but it's not necessary to end your line with the semicolon. So here he just changed the text inside of the HTML, so I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to type document, which refers to the HTML document. And then I'm going to say dot get element by ID. So what this is saying is we want our document, which is our HTML body, and we want to get an element inside of it using its ID. So this is called a function, get element by ID, and to actually run a function we need to include our brackets here. So without the brackets we're just saying the name of the function, and by including our brackets we're actually calling that function. We're saying run the code inside of it. And inside of these brackets we need to give it the ID of the element that we want to grab. So I'm going to grab heading here. So inside of quotes, remember when we're working with text it needs to be inside of quotes, and I'm going to type heading 1. So this function here, document.getElementById, will grab one element from our page, and we're specifying the ID here as heading 1. So it's going to grab this element here. And then we're saying dot inner HTML. So remember here the HTML part is in all caps. And make sure you typed all of that correctly. JavaScript is case sensitive, and also if you just miss one letter here the whole thing won't work. So then we want to type an equals to sign, and here he used brackets and put the string inside of it. We don't need to use the brackets either. We can just add in our quotes like this, and we can say this is JavaScript. And again, I told you we don't need to put a semicolon at the end, but you can if you want to follow along exactly with the video. I'm not going to add it because JavaScript no longer requires that. So before I hit save here, I'm going to view the page. And it says hello and everyone here. And once I hit save here, it's going to say this is JavaScript at the top. So I hope everyone understands what this function did. it grabbed the element with the ID of heading 1, which is this element, and then we're getting the inner HTML of it. So the inner HTML means everything that's between the tags. So this, it goes between the opening and the closing tag. That's your inner HTML. And we're changing it, so we're setting it equal to something, and we're giving a new value here. So this new value that we give it is what it's putting inside of here. It's replacing it. As an example here, if I was to type plus equals to, this means we're appending to it. So we're still going to keep the hello there, and we're also adding this is JavaScript. And if I save this and head back, you can now see that it has hello, and it also has this is JavaScript. So I'm just going to get rid of that plus and keep it the same as the video. I hope everyone understands how this get element by ID works now. I've explained it twice. And let's head back to the video here.
Now let's go over our code again, and I'm going to explain it. I'll test it in the browser. Inside and change its HTML to be.
Okay, so he's just talking about how it links this with the ID.
Same thing.
That's how get element by ID works.
Let's save this and refresh it in the browser. But before we go there,
and now he's doing the same thing with the paragraph tag. I'm just going to type it out even though we don't need to. Document dot get element by ID. And here he's just doing this is fun or something. I'm not sure exactly what he typed in. Oh, sorry, I need to grab the element first here. So the ID of the element is paragraph 1. And I'm going to say dot inner HTML and set it equal to, and I'll open my quotes here, and I'll say this is fun or whatever he typed in. And I'll save this. We head back to our browser, and now we can see that that text changed as well.
let's take a look again. So, and there we have JavaScript recognizes it as the two numbers.
Okay, so now he's showing us a bit of maths here. Let me go back a bit.
What if we did a mathematical operation like plus 5 plus 6?
Okay, so here he's just doing a maths like 5 plus 6. So I'm going to type the number 5, the plus sign, and 6 here. And if we save this and head back, it will say 11 here. Notice that I didn't put this in quotes. So only strings means text, only that goes between these quotes. If you're working with numbers, you can just type the numbers directly here. And also, although you don't need to add the brackets like I've shown you, well, with numbers it's a bit better because it makes it easier to read. So if I had the longer line of code here and I didn't include these brackets, it will be a bit confusing as to why there's just random numbers floating around here. Adding the brackets around it just makes it a bit more readable. So before I move on here, we have the plus sign here, and obviously we have the minus sign as well. So this will give us -1. But for multiplication and division, we actually don't have symbols for that on our keyboard. So for multiplication, we actually use the star symbol. So I'm going to save this. And if I head back now, you can see that it's been multiplied. 5 multiplied by 6 is 30. And then for division, we use the slash, /. So if I save this now and head back, we now have some fraction. That's 5 divided by 6. And yeah, that's basically how maths works. I'm just going to change this back to the plus sign, and I'm going to head back to the video.
And save that, double quotes. Now there's a reason for this. When you put a number without double quotes, then JavaScript
Okay, I've already explained why we don't put numbers in the quotes.
recognizes the arithmetic and refresh and see what it's done. 5, 6. What's this? This is not actually 56 sections of text. So you can use it for between. Let's save this and see what happens in the browser. JavaScript is fun. All right, so basically what JavaScript did was it concatenated.
Okay, showing us how to add two strings together. So to do this, I'm going to get rid of this here. And now I'm going to put a string here like this. And I'm going to leave a space here. And then add a plus sign and add in another string. And is fun. And I'll show you why I put that space here in a second. So I'm going to head back to the browser here. And you can see that it just shows this is fun. But if I didn't leave that space here, so let me get rid of that, it's going to put them right next to each other, so the words like fuse together. So if you add two strings together, JavaScript won't automatically add a space between those two strings. So you need to manually add that space yourself, either at the end of this string or at the beginning of this string. So I'm going to save this and let's head back.
Or joined those two sections of text, those two quotes.
And it looks like this is the end of this video, so I'm going to click on next to go to the next lesson. It looks like this is a short week. I'm already on 18% and we only did one video so far.
In this lesson, we'll learn about variables. Now, what exactly is a variable? A variable is a little space in the computer's memory where you store data. Now, often you have to store data under...
Okay, I'm going to give you my own explanation for variables here. So imagine if this was a super long script, like this was 100 lines of code. Well, in such case, we're going to need to use the same value more than once. And instead of like, if it's a huge number, we don't want to type out that number every single time. So we want to store it and then just use the name of the variable later on. You can think of a variable more like a container. So to create one, I'm just going to move this down a bit. And at the top here, still in the script tags, you can't write JavaScript outside of the script tags. I'm going to say let, and I'm going to name my variable my var here. And then the equals to sign. This is an equals to sign, not a minus sign. I know some of you have made that mistake in the group. But yeah, we'll set the equals to sign here, and then we'll say like 23. So if I save this, now let me get rid of this is fun here, and I'll type out my var here. And if I save this and head back, it will say 23 here. So what's going on is this let keyword allows us to create a variable, and we're creating one called my var, and then we're setting it equal to the number 23. So anywhere in our code where we say the word my var, it's going to know that that's equal to 23. Now, before I go back and play the video, I know he uses the keyword var here, but this is actually an old way of doing it. The new way is to use the word let. So it's the same thing, it's just let is the new modern way of doing it, and you should always use this instead. Now, other than let, there's also another one called const, C-O-N-S-T, and this means we're creating a constant variable. So what that means is, let me first get rid of this. If we created a variable using the word let, then later on in our code we could do my var is equal to 24. And now if I save this, it will update to say 24 here. However, if I use the word const here like this, and I head back, it will actually not work here anymore. So what's happening is if I right click and click on inspect here, and then I click on this console button up here, it says type error, assignment to constant variable. So what's happening is when we create a constant variable, we can never update it. We're making a value that we don't ever want to change. So this line of code here won't work anymore since this variable is no longer updatable. So that's the difference between let and const. Most of the time you'll use let, but sometimes for variables that, for example, if we're storing a address of a server or something like that, that will be in a constant variable because that will never change. And yeah, I'm just going to get rid of this now. We'll talk more about const later when we have a use for it, but for now I'm just going to head back to the video.
A special name, and for instance name or surname or ID numbers of variables are text, name of the variable, the name that you're going to use to reference that variable.
So again, here he uses the word var. I told you that's the old way of doing it. We use let or const now. Let is the preferred way, and yeah.
Let's call it text1. And then you put a semicolon. Now what this line means is that you've just declared a variable in the computer's memory, and that variable is currently empty. You haven't actually added any value to it. You've called that variable text1. Let's make another one. Text2.
Okay, I'm just going to skip forward a bit since he's just doing what I've already shown you.
Is equal to.
Okay, so what he did is, here where I created my variable, I gave it a value instantly, but you can also just say let my var, and then at the bottom here you can say my var is equal to 25, for example, and this will also work. But it's a bit cleaner to just do it all on one line. It's not really saving you any space because this equals to and the value doesn't take up that much space on the line, so moving it onto a different line doesn't really affect anything. If you want to, you can do that, but you're just wasting 2 lines of code then when you could have just done it in one.
There we go. So now we have declared 2 variables, text1 and text2. And not only that, but more importantly, how do we actually use variables? Very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to use the same 2 lines of text output that we used earlier. Delete its inner HTML value to text1.
Okay, so I've already shown you how that works here. When we're setting the value equal to something, we just type the name of the variable, and that will put the value here. So my var, and I hit save, and whatever's inside of my var, that's what this will get replaced by. So we're basically saying the inner HTML is equal to whatever's inside of my var, which is this 25 here. And yeah, I hope you get the idea of how this is similar to a container. When we speak about a container, we're actually talking about what's inside of it, which is this 25. And yeah, I hope you guys get that. I know it might not be the best explanation right now, but you'll get used to it as we move along. Variables are really common.
In other words, set it to whatever is stored inside text1. Now let's see how this works out. Let's change it to hello everyone. Let's see what that means. So let's say I mistakenly put double quotes there.
Okay. So here when we type the name of the variable, we don't put quotes around it. If we do surround it in quotes, that means this is now a word. It's not a variable or code or anything. It's just the word myvar. And if I save this and head back, you'll see here that it literally prints the word myvar here. So when we use variables, we don't surround it in quotes or anything. But other than variables, if you want actual text, you have to surround that in quotes. If you want numbers, you can just type the number straight out like this. And then there's also true and false. So if I use true here, it won't really print out anything here, because true is not an actual value like the rest of the stuff. true is used for determining whether a statement is true or false. So if I said something like 5 is equal to 6, then that would say false. If I said 5 is equal to 5, that would say true. And that's what true and false is used for. But we'll look at this more when we do if statements, which is probably later on in the same lesson. So I'm going to change this back to my variable, and I'll hit save. And let's go back to the course videos here.
See what JavaScript does now. Save this and refresh in the browser. It changed the value to text1. That means JavaScript put the literal value that's inside the double quotes into the heading output, which is not what we want. So we need to remember that variable names are never included inside double quotes. Okay, now let's have a little bit of fun. Let's create a third variable.
Just going to skip ahead. We know how to create variables now.
Text string is awesome.
And there, I think he just showed you how to add two variables together. So let me create a second one here. And let me turn this first one into a string here. So I'm going to, instead of storing the number 25, I'm going to store the word this. And I'm going to leave a space here again. And then below this, I'll create another variable called myvar2. And I'll set this equal to is fun. And again, remember that space here so that when we add the two sentences together, there's a space between this and is. And then here I'm going to say myvar plus myvar2. So you can basically guess what this will do. It will just add these two strings together. And you can see that that's exactly what it does here. So let's head back to the video and see what he does next.
Do this. Alright, save this, refresh the browser, and there.
Okay, so that's the end of this video. Let's move on to the next one. And now we're in lesson 3, JavaScript variables.
We'll give this paragraph an ID. In keeping with the previous naming structure, we'll call it paragraph 2. And we'll leave it empty. We're going to use that a little later. Now let's declare two number variables. There are certain rules when it comes to naming variables. Basically, we're going to use the variables that we just created. Okay, so we're going to start off with document.getElement.
Also, if you're wondering why I'm not typing out every single piece of code he has here, that's because this file is just for practice. We don't need to submit it anywhere. So I've already shown you how variables work here. There's no reason for me to create 100 variables like how he's doing in the video. If I need to create something there to demonstrate something to you, then I'll show it here. But otherwise, I'm not going to create 100 different variables just to demonstrate what he's showing in the video.
By ID is equal to not a value yet. We haven't actually assigned a value to num a as yet. So value, you can do everything in the same line. So let's look at this. You could say var num a is equal to 7 and var num value 7. Let's see if it. We tried to do some arithmetic. What that happened with that was the mind.
Okay, so I've already shown you all this, but let me just go over it one more time since that's what he's explaining right now. So I'm going to create a third paragraph here, and inside of this angle bracket here, remember if you just automatically generate your paragraph tag, it's going to put your cursor in the middle here, so I can't start typing ID is equal to here. It needs to be inside of this angle bracket. So inside of here, I'm going to type ID is equal to, and I'm going to set it equal to paragraph 2. And make sure that it's inside of your angle bracket here. Don't accidentally put it in the middle, because then it will actually write whatever you typed out here in your browser. And I'll just show you what that mistake looks like, so that if you're seeing the same thing, you know what you did. So I'm going to hit save here and view it in the browser, and now it literally types out ID is equal to paragraph 2. So if you're seeing the same error here somewhere, make sure that that is inside of your angle bracket and not between the opening and closing tag. So I'm just going to fix that here. And it looks like we made some kind of error there, but I just fixed that up. Okay. So now if I hit back, everything should be clean here. And what he was showing is that if we create a variable like num_a and we set it equal to a number like 2, and then we create another one like num_b and we set that equal to 5, we can then like add them together and stuff. So down here I can just copy and paste this whole thing, but I'm going to type everything out from the beginning again so that you get a bit of experience with it. I'm going to say document, which if you've forgotten by now, document refers to the HTML document, so this file we're in, and then dot get element by ID, and this is going to grab one element in here by its ID, so it's going to grab one of these. And then we need to use our brackets here because we're saying we want to run this function get element by ID, and this takes one parameter inside of here. A parameter is a value that a function takes in order to work. So for this function to work, the value it takes is a string of the element ID here. You can see that in this tooltip that's popped up here. So it takes a string of the element ID, and the element ID is this paragraph 2. So in here I'm going to add in my quotes and I'm going to type paragraph 2. And then I type dot inner HTML here and is equal to, and now I can say like num_a plus num_b. And I've already shown you this earlier on. You already know it's just going to add 2 and 5 together, which is 7. So if we head to the browser now, we should see the number 7 here. And if I just change this to like a 5 as well and I save it, now it's going to say 10. And we can also do minus, so minus sign, that will give us 0. And then we have multiplication and division. Multiplication is the star symbol. Now we have 25, and then division is a /. So now we will have 1 here, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. So let's head back and see what he does next.
Minus sign. So we have num_a minus num_b. Multiplication sign, which in JavaScript as well as almost every programming language is the as well as numbers inside the output as a concatenator. It joins text together. Will this actually work? What is our expectation? Our expectation is that it will display the answer is 70. Let's see if it works.
Okay, now let's pause this and type out what he did here. So I'm going to delete this first. And here he typed the string the answer is, and he actually added a string to a number. So let's do num_a. And let me save this and see what it does first. So okay, here it works correctly. It says the answer is 5. And now if I add, so plus num_b, let's save this and see what it does. And here it says the answer is 55. So what it's doing here is, because we started off with a string, when we're adding a number to it, it's converting that number into a string. So first it converts this into a string and puts it here, and then it converts this into a string and puts it here. So we end up with 55 being written here. So I think one possible solution to this is we can surround this part of the sum in brackets, and we leave the string just as it is, And if I hit save here, it will now say the answer is 10. So now that's how we would fix this, but I'm going to unfix it and leave it broken because that's what he has in the video right now.
Save and refresh. The answer is 70. So it worked exactly as we expected. What JavaScript did was it recognized this section as text, and it recognized these two variables as numbers. And
okay, so he actually used multiplication there, and that's why it's working for him. So I'm just going to change this to the star symbol for multiplication. And if we head back, now that should work. But if you're going to use the plus symbol there, like I showed you, you need to surround this in quotes like this. Sorry, not in quotes, in brackets. And yeah, that's how you would add two variables together while also adding it into a string here. I hope that makes sense to everyone. If you have any questions, leave a comment here, or if you're watching this later on and it's already pre-recorded, just leave a comment in the comment section there. And make sure you join our groups as well. We have a Discord group and a WhatsApp group. So let me hit play here.
It did the arithmetic here, basically multiplied these two together, and then it added the answer to this string. Now let's make it a little more exciting. Let's make JavaScript output this sentence. 7 times 10 is equal to, and the answer. All right, now we're getting a little ambitious here. So num A will display 7 plus, and then we put the times sign, which in normal school arithmetic is the x, and then we put in the value num B plus, are you following, is equal to num.
Okay, let me type this out quickly. So what he wants us to say here is num A, oh sorry, I need to actually type num A plus, and then, oh, okay, so we want that plus to be inside of quotes here. So this is looking a bit confusing here. Num A, this is a real plus sign, so we're adding it to something. And then inside of the string we put a plus sign as well. So this plus sign up here is saying add this to this. And the plus sign inside here, since it's in between quotes, it will actually like display the plus sign on our page. So before I continue, let me just save this and show you what that looks like. So you can see here now we have 5 and the plus sign is also showing here. And that's what we want. So then we want to put a plus sign as well again. And then here we say num B. So let's save this, head back. And now it says 5 plus 5. And now I'm going to put a plus sign again, another string. And I'll put the equals to sign in here, inside the string. And we'll save that, take a look at it. It now says 5 plus 5 is equal to, and again a plus sign here. This is a really long string here, but sometimes it does end up looking like this when you're typing your own code. Usually it's like bad practice if you have such a long string with lots of plus signs in between it. But anyways, after this equals to sign, a plus sign, and then here we want to do num A plus num B. And let's see what this looks like. So now it's saying 5 plus 5 is equal to 55. I already showed you why it gives us the error of 55 here. So to solve this, we just surround this in brackets, this last part. And now all of this becomes a string. But before this can be turned into a string, it first does the sum inside here. And then once that sum is complete, it changes into a string as well. Let's head back and see if that worked. And no, it did not work. So let's head to the video actually and see what he does.
A times num b. What's going on here? Let's analyze this line first before we go and see.
Oh, so he's using multiplication again here. I've made a mistake. So this plus sign that's inside of the quotes here, I want to change it to a capital X so that it looks like the multiplication symbol. And then here I want to change this plus sign to a star. And I can get rid of these brackets here because we don't need them anymore. I'm just going to save and view our page here. So yeah, it says 5 times 5 is equal to 25. So I hope everyone got that. And let's move on to the next part here.
Output. What we're saying to JavaScript is output num a, meaning output the value 7, then output an x, which is the symbol for multiplication, then output num b, which is 10, then output the equal.
Okay, I'm just going to skip ahead a bit here because we've already went over what all of this does.
Any proper spaces, and it will look terrible. All right, let's refresh this, and there's an error. Let's go back and look for that error. Let's look at this line very, very carefully. I've left out something. I've missed out something here. Let's start going through it again. Num a plus, double quotes, x plus. Whoa, the plus is missing.
So make sure you have the plus between every element here. So we're doing num a plus, and then we're doing a string here with the x inside of it, and then again plus, and then num b, again plus, and then the string of the equals to sign, again we do a plus after that, and then num a times num b. So there needs to be a plus between each thing that you're adding. And yeah, that's, make sure you didn't miss out a plus sign or anything.
Added the plus, num b 7 times 10 is equal.
Okay, I'm going to hit next here now. And now we're doing conditionals, which basically it's the true and false that I showed you before.
In this lesson, we're going to learn about conditionals. Now, what exactly are conditionals?
So I'm actually going to pause this for a second and I'll be right Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I just needed to sort something out quickly. So let's hit play here.
Whether it's laptops, PCs, or mobile phones, have to make decisions all the time. Now let's take an example. If you're logging into a site, whether it's your email account, your Gmail or Facebook account, you need to put in some information. You need to put in your username and password. And when you do input your values and hit submit, then there's something happening behind the scenes. What's happening is there's an application that's comparing what you've input to what's actually stored in the app. And if it's correct, if there's a perfect match, then the system will let you in. And if there isn't a match,
Okay, I'm just going to skip forward a bit and I'll give my own explanation for how this works.
and then giving you feedback to the application.
Obviously, you can watch the same video from your email or from the IT Varsity website. So I don't need to play it for you here. I'm just going to skip forward and explain the code.
HTML word, and we'll assign it the value of 007 or whatever value you.
Okay, so let's create a variable here. I'm going to delete all of this since we don't need it anymore. And still inside of the script tags here, remember all JavaScript must go between these two script tags. There's also a way of creating a separate JavaScript file here and linking it. But I think for this week 4 lessons, we're not going to create a separate JavaScript file. We're doing everything inside the HTML file. So between these script tags here, I'm going to say let. And again, I know he uses var there, but let is the new modern way of doing it. Var is the old and no longer recommended way of doing it. So let, what did he name the variable? So he named it password. And he set it equal to a string of 007. And also here, notice that he put this inside of a string even though it's a number. Firstly, it's because passwords are usually stored as strings. That's because why would a password be just numbers? In this case, it is just numbers, but no matter what, whether it's numbers or alphabets or whatever, we always store it in strings because it could also contain alphabets. And if I were to not include these quotes here, so I just type 007, it's going to give me an error here, and if I hover over it, it tells me what that is. But actually what will happen is if I just type like 07, it's still an error, but what's happening is we can't have a number that begins with 0. This is just 7. There's no reason for the 0 to be here. And actually, like if I try to print this out or something, it will just print the number 7. It will ignore the 0. So that's why another reason why we need to surround this in quotes. Okay, so I hope you understand that in programming languages, you can't have a number that starts with 0. If you want a 3-digit number like this that starts with a 0, you need to have it inside of a string or else it won't accept that 0. And yeah, let's move on now.
You want to use. Right, now we're going to assume that that is the value 007. That means what the user has input is 007.
Okay, so I just changed this. He changed the name of the variable here to user input password. So we're pretending like this is what the user typed in. And then on the next line here, we're going to say let actual password Okay, sorry for that. I just had to take a quick break again there. So let actual password equal to, and we're setting it to the same thing, 007. And let's save this. Let's head back to the video here.
Password is also 007. Now we got a match here, but we're going to change these values shortly.
Also notice here in the video, he's typing his variables outside of the script tag, which is an error. It's not going to work. It needs to be within the script tags for that to actually work.
Now we're going to write a little segment to output something, to output correct if the username and password, if the two passwords match, and to output.
So make sure you don't have that same error in your code. Make sure you're creating your two variables inside of these script tags. So I'm going to skip forward a bit just to see what he does here.
So there's a difference between an uppercase A and a lowercase a.
So as I explained before, in JavaScript things are case sensitive. So if I want to use this later on, I can't use a lowercase u here or a lowercase I. It will read that as something completely different from this. And yeah. So down here he created what's called an if statement. And let me type it out quickly and then we'll explain what it does. So to type it out, we use the keyword if, and then we use our brackets. And inside of this brackets, we want to check something. So I'm going to check if user input password. And notice here I'm using 2 equals to signs. So if we use 1 equals to sign, it means we're setting something equal to something else. If we use 2 equals to signs, it means we're asking, is two things equal? So whenever you're checking if two things are equal, you use 2 equals to signs here. Always remember that. Sometimes you make an easy mistake of just putting 1 equals to sign here, and then your whole code doesn't work, and it'll take you a while to find where that error is. So we're checking, we put 2 equals to sign, and then we say actual password here. So it says if user input password, 2 equals to signs, and then actual password. And that needs to be in these brackets here. So if is actually like a function, it needs those brackets to run. And let's head back.
If user input is equal to, now see what I've done? I've used a double equals to sign.
I've already explained this. Let's head forward a bit.
We need some.
So after this, we use curly brackets here. Again, after the if, we use normal brackets, and we put what we're checking inside of this, and then we use the curly brackets here. So inside of the curly brackets, any code that we put inside of here will only run if the statement is true. So if the statement is false, this doesn't equal to this, any code we put inside here, it will just ignore it and skip over it. But if it is true, then it will run the code inside of here. So let's head back and see what he puts inside.
Some kind of HTML for the output. Okay, I've been making a mistake here. All of this actually should reside between the script tags. You need to be careful about this, otherwise your JavaScript won't work. And up here we'll put a paragraph. We'll call it output.
Okay, let's do that. So up here I'm going to delete the 3 tags we had before. We don't need them anymore. And I'm going to create a p tag. So I'll just do this manually. It's a bit faster for this example. ID is equal to, and we'll write output here. And I'll close this, and when you close it, it'll automatically create a closing tag for you. So we can just leave it at that, save our file. And then inside of here, okay, let me go along with the video. I don't want to type ahead.
And the ID here, HTML, and then comes the condition.
Okay, so it's exactly what I thought he was going to type. So document.getElement by ID, and we're going to use the ID of this p tag that we just created, which is output. So I'm going to type here output inside of my quotes. Remember, you have to have these quotes here when you're dealing with strings. And then dot inner HTML, and we'll set this equal to correct. So if I save this now and we check on our page here, it will say correct here. And if I make it incorrect, like if I change these values to something else, now it's checking if 007 is equal to 002. That's what it's doing here. Remember, this is a container, so it's storing 007, and it's checking if this value is equal to this value, which now it's no longer the same. If I save this and go back, it will now not print anything out here, because since this statement here is not true, it's not going to run any of the code that's between these curly braces. So I hope you get that. That's the best explanation I can give you, actually. I can't explain it any better than that. And yeah, let's head back to the video now.
If the user input a wrong password, let's say the user input 008, for example, what happens in this case? Refresh, and there's nothing output. Don't go inside these curly braces. Whatever is inside the curly braces will not operate. Feedback to say your password is incorrect. Output correct password.
Okay, so now you're showing an else statement, which at the end of these curly braces, so we opened it up here and we closed it down here. After that, you can type else, and then you put your curly braces here. Again, sorry I had to take a break there. Like I said, we're building something right now, so there's going to be a lot of background noise and stuff. And yeah, now inside of this else statement here, let me just retype it again since I took a break right after I typed it. So we have the curly brace here for the if statement, and we close it down here. Right after it, we type the word else, and we open a new set of curly braces. And any code I put here will run if the if statement doesn't run. So right now these two values are not equal, so this if statement won't run. But because this doesn't run, then whatever's inside of the else statement will run. So I'm going to type document.getElement by ID, and again the ID here is output, and .inner HTML, and we'll set this equal to the password is wrong. So if I save this and head back to my browser now, we should now see the password is wrong. And if I make them equal here, so I type 007 here, now both say 007. So that means this if statement is true, and it will run this piece of code here. So now it does say correct here. I hope you get if statements and else statements here. If not, make sure you're in the group so you can ask questions there. I'll put a link in the comment section to the Discord group. And yeah, let's head back to this video.
If it doesn't match, else, if it doesn't match, then I put something else. get element by ID, output dot inner HTML. What do we output? Incorrect password, and refresh the browser. Boom, there we have it. Incorrect password.
Okay, let's move on to the next lesson. So now we're doing JavaScript functions. So let's play this.
For a description of a function.
Okay, we're starting again. And it looks like now he just has an h1 tag up there. Let's delete everything inside of script here. I'm not going to put the h1 tag up here yet. Let's see what he types out first.
Is that a function is a set of instructions that are grouped together and given a name. So whenever you need to call
So again, I'll skip through this and just explain it myself.
Instruction function, and then you call that function is what this is going to do. So we're going to embed the onClick JavaScript function right inside the tag. Basically, it's what's known as a JavaScript event. What happens? Well, we as the developer, we as the code put in the text. Now, normally you'd use double quotes for the inner HTML tags because that's what we've done in the past. So it's onClick is equal to. All right, so you use double quotes. Now see what's happening. This takes our program to crash.
Okay, let me explain this now. So he has an h1 up here, and he has some text inside of it, like hello. And inside of this h tag, inside of the, like where we put the ID, so between these angle brackets here, we want to put onClick, and we put equals to here. And then it should automatically add these quotes here if you're on VS Code. And inside of the quotes, we actually type JavaScript. So I'm going to type here inner HTML, and I'll set it equal to, and here we use single quotes. So the reason why we're not using double quotes is because, you see, if I put a double quote here, the browser won't know that this quote and this quote matches, and then the two inside quotes match. What it will do is it will think that the quote starts here and ends here, and it will just get confused. So just make sure that if you put in quotes inside of other quotes, you use different types of quotes. So that's why we have double quotes and single quotes as well. So I'm going to use my single quotes here, and inside of that I'm going to type goodbye. And if I save this and head to my browser now, again, sorry about that, background noises and stuff. But yeah, now if we head back to our code and click on this, it will now change to say goodbye. Let me reload again so you can see that. I just click on it and it says goodbye now. So let's head back here and see what it's doing. This onClick event here, it happens when we click on this tag. So when we click on the h1, and it runs the code inside of this quotes here. And the code says we must change the inner HTML to the string of goodbye. And again, we use single quotes here because if I were to use double quotes, it will think that this quote here starts here and ends here. And then it will get confused about why we're writing the word goodbye here. So we need to use single quotes so that our editor can distinguish between these outside quotes here and the inside quotes for this string. And I've accidentally messed that up. Let me just close that out here. I hope that everyone understands this now. I know the quotes can be a bit confusing and it's difficult for me to explain. But yeah, that's how this works. Let me head back and play the video.
It'll cause bugs. Now we can use single quotes. And single quotes and double quotes are equally exchangeable in JavaScript. You can use either one. So here for convenience, we're going to use single quotes. And that's my text. Obviously nothing happened, but let's see what happens on click. You click on it, it changes to is awesome.
Okay, so we've seen this now. Let's head to the next lesson. And this week is actually a bit longer than I thought it would be. So I might have to cut it in half at 50% and then stream the other 50% of the lesson later on tonight.
And when you click it the second time, it changes back to the original text, which is back to JavaScript. Now we're going back to conditions in JavaScript. Yes. Then we've got that right. So we've got if this.innerHTML is equal to, see, this is the comparison operator, this is not the assignment operator, hence we're using.
Okay, so you just squashed the entire thing in here, which is really bad practice, but let's do it anyway. So we get rid of this. Again, once you delete that, make sure your two quotes are still here. And between the two quotes, we want to say if. We open our brackets and we type our conditional statement here, which is this dot inner HTML and double equals to sign here because we're checking, and I want to check if it's equal to the word hello here. Remember, I'm typing the word hello here because that's what I have inside of my tags here, but if you're following along with the tutorial, he has the word JavaScript there. And actually, let me change it just so that no one gets confused. JavaScript, and here I'm checking JavaScript. Okay, and this long if statement in here is going to get confusing, so make sure you're following along properly here. After the end of the brackets here, we want to open our curly brackets, and inside of the curly brackets, that's where we want to type the code that will run if the statement is true. And what he typed here is awesome. So I'm going to say this dot inner HTML is equal to is awesome. And I'll save this. Again, I know how long this function is here. And in real code, we'd never do something like this. We'd type it separately here and then link it here, which he'll probably show us later on. But for now, let's just follow along with the video.
Double equals to sign.
Actually, we have already typed in everything we need to type in for this to work. So if I just click on this now, it will change to is awesome here. Again, I reload, I click on this, it will change to is awesome. But after it changes to is awesome, I can't click on this again, it won't do anything. That's because when we click on it, it's checking if the inner.html is equal to JavaScript. And it's no longer equal to JavaScript here, so that's why it's not working when I click on it now. It's only going to work when it says JavaScript here. So I hope that makes sense, and I know he's going to make this function here even longer. So make sure that you've got everything working up to this point. And if you haven't, just pause the stream here if you're watching this later on, and then copy it down exactly as I have it here. Remember, JavaScript is case sensitive, so you can't mess up the spelling of any of these things. you can't accidentally put a capital letter here, it won't work. It has to be exactly the same.
So if the value of this JavaScript, click on it, yay, it works. JavaScript. Alright, let's double click.
Okay, so now after we change it to is awesome, now we want to say, because I showed you here, when we click on it, it changes to is awesome, but then if we click again, nothing happens. So what we want to happen is for it to turn back into the word JavaScript so that we can keep clicking and it will alternate between these two. So the way we do that, we saw this already. We use an else statement. So after the closing curly bracket here, we want to type else, and we want to open another set of curly braces here. And inside of these curly braces, I'm just going to move this down here so we can see. Inside of the else's curly braces here, we want to type again this dot inner HTML, and we set it equal to now JavaScript again. And remember here, everywhere inside of this JavaScript code, wherever we're working with strings, we're typing single quotes here. So here are single quotes, and then here is also single quotes. And here at the end for the else statement, we use single quotes again. So make sure you don't accidentally put double quotes in there. It will interfere with the double quotes that's around the entire thing. And yeah, let's save this, head back to our browser. And now if I click on JavaScript here, it will say is awesome. And then if I click on that again, it will change back to JavaScript. And I can even click it again and it will just cycle between this. So if you can't follow the logic here, it's because originally we have the text JavaScript in here. So that's the actual text that's inside of our tag here. And then in this onClick event here, we're saying if the text is equal to JavaScript, which it is by default. So by default, it says JavaScript inside of it. If it says that, we must change it to is awesome. So again, if we click on it, we must change it to is awesome. And after it's changed to is awesome, obviously the statement is no longer true. The inner text is no longer equal to JavaScript. So that means it won't run whatever's inside of these curly brackets here. And then we have an else statement here. So whenever this if statement doesn't run, the else statement will run. And inside of this else statement, we say this dot inner HTML is equal to JavaScript. So we're setting it again back to its original message, which is JavaScript. And now since it's set to JavaScript again, the next time we click on this button and it checks if the inner HTML is equal to JavaScript, it's going to be true again once more. So I hope you get that. That's the best I can do at explaining it. If you still don't get it, then you're going to have to just practice on your own until you do get it. But yeah, that's the best I can explain it. So let's head back to the video now.
We've got the curly brace open, in a sense that it works. But look at this line. Look at line 6. It's terrible. It's huge. It's confusing. It's hard to read. And it's error prone. You can make a real schlep to it. We call it function change.
Okay, so let's create a function here. I'm going to say function, and I'll just call it my function. You can name it the same thing as what's in the video. And then we use our normal brackets here. And next to that, we open our curly brackets. So the curly brackets here and the normal brackets is basically the same thing that we're doing in the if statement here. And right now, we can just ignore these normal brackets. We don't need to type anything inside of it. But notice here in this if statement, we actually put something inside of these normal brackets, and it requires that. So if I didn't type anything here, this if statement won't work. And when we're creating the function, if I were to type something in here, like for example, I type the letter X, now whenever we run this function, it would always require us to pass in something here, because when we're creating it, we're saying it takes something in here. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't want to confuse anyone. But yeah, I just wanted to explain why these brackets are here. And these curly brackets here are the code that our function contains. So I'm just going to copy everything from here and paste it into there. Copy, and I'm going to delete it from here. And I'm going to paste it into here. And now to neaten up this code, I'm going to press Alt, Shift, and F. And it did neaten it up, but it didn't bring it down like I wanted. So I'm going to manually bring this down. Okay, let me undo that. Neaten it up a bit. Okay, so this looks a bit better and more clean. So now we read this out again. It says if, and then we have our normal brackets here, which we're checking if the inner HTML is equal to JavaScript. And then if it is equal to, we're running the code inside these curly brackets, which is setting the inner HTML to is awesome. And if it's not equal to JavaScript here, then we're doing the else statement. So inside of the else statement, we're changing it back to JavaScript here. And to actually connect this function into this onClick event here, we want to type the name of the function. So myfunc, and then we use our brackets here. And I'll save this and make sure it's still working. Okay, so I might have made a mistake here. Maybe we don't need these brackets. And if this doesn't work, I'm just going to follow along with the video, and it doesn't work.
Text. See, you can give a function just about any.
Sometimes that happens.
There's some rules around naming your functions, which you can see in the notes for this video. I'm not going to get into all of those rules. But just like variables, you can name your functions just about anything you want. But here's some advice. Name, and everything that needs to post on click is equal to JavaScript. We've arranged our code. The script tags are indented a little further away from the margin. This is one of the ways of blank. Okay, my code didn't work. My code is not working.
Okay, so it's not meant to work. I'm going to make a prediction here. I think the part of the code that says the word this is the problem here. But anyways, let's go back and see what he actually does.
Okay, so now what could be wrong with this code? When you're looking at this code, and this is a nice way to learn about debugging your JavaScript programs. What we did was we took the content from there, we cut it and we pasted it in here, exactly as is. And in there we use the keyword this.
Okay, so that's correct there.
This referred to the h1 tags, and while this was inside the h1 tags, JavaScript recognized the keyword this as referring to the element in which this was found. So this means this tag that I'm currently inside. But when the code is moved out of the h1 tag, when it's moved out of the element, then JavaScript doesn't recognize what this is anymore, because this code doesn't sit inside there anymore. So this doesn't mean anything. What we need to do is we're going to need to identify this element using, yes, you guessed it, getElement by ID.
I'm just going to type this out ahead, and we're going to give this h1 tag an ID here. So ID is equal to, and I'll say heading. Yeah, you can type whatever you want as your ID here. And then inside of the script, let me make some space here. So not inside of the function, but inside of the script, we're going to create a variable here. I'm going to say let heading, and I'm going to set it equal to document.getElementById, and I'm going to type the ID that I just created up here, so heading, and I'm going to save this. And down here, instead of using the word this, now I'm going to use this variable called heading that I created. And I'm going to update all of the places where it says this to say heading. And now if I save this and head back to the page, it should work. Okay, it still doesn't work. And it's because I removed the brackets from here earlier when I thought that that was the error. So I'll save this and head back. And now you can see that it works when I click on it. So let's head back to the video.
So first things first, we're going to need to give this guy an ID. ID is equal to heading. All right. And then here, we're going to use document.getElementById.
Okay, so it looks like he's going to manually type out document.getElementById for each of these, but this way of creating a variable is just easier. So we're creating a variable called heading, and we're setting it equal to that document.getElementById heading. So basically, once we grab the element using this code, we're going to store that element inside of heading so that we can more easily affect it here. And that just saves us some typing. But you can type the whole thing out yourself if you want to follow along with the video. I'm just going to leave it this way because it's the better way of doing it.
What did we call that guy? We call him heading dot inner HTML. If document.getElementById heading.innerHTML is that. So this is how we're going to call this guy. All right, so I'm going to is equal to JavaScript.
Okay, and now let's move on to the next video. So now we're doing function parameters, which is what I was trying to explain to you before. So function parameters is what goes inside of these brackets here. And the thing about function parameters is if you add something in here when you're creating the function, then when you're calling the function, you have to always pass something in. So if I expect it to take x here, I can't now run the function like this. I have to put something inside that goes inside of x. So let's head back and see what he does.
In the previous lesson, you learned about functions, and we created a very simple function, which was this one, change text. Now all we did was, from the HTML, we called this function, and this function did some stuff. Now functions are a lot more powerful than just what we saw previously. You can also send data to functions.
Just going to fast forward a bit.
Addition. All right. It needs to receive. So we'll call this.
Okay, so he made a p tag here. And did he give it an ID? Yes. So we'll create an ID of addition. And down here now, after we created this function, we're going to create a new function down here. And we're going to call it add numbers.
num1, comma, num2.
And inside of these brackets here, we want to take two variables, and we'll name it the same as what he named his. So num1 and num2. And now that we've added these two parameters here, whenever we're calling this function add numbers, we have to pass in two things here. So after this, I'm just going to open the curly braces and let's head back to the video.
All right, and then we'll do the open and close curly braces. Now let's look at this function. The name of this function is add numbers, and inside the parentheses we've got two variables. These are known as function parameters. So parameter 1 is called num1 and parameter 2 is called num2. Now what this says is that whenever this function is called, it needs to be sent these two numbers. It needs to be sent two numbers. The first number will be assigned to num1 and the second will be assigned to num2. So in a way, this is like a variable declaration.
Okay, so I've already explained this. Let me skip forward a bit.
Instructed this function to add these two values, num1 and num2, and to output the sum of these two into the paragraph. Simple as that.
Okay. So here we have an ID here. We're going to grab the ID of this and we're going to add these two numbers here together and put it inside of this p tag. So to do that, we're going to say document dot get element by ID. Let me make sure that that's what he did as well. Yes, so document dot get element by ID. We'll use our brackets here. And remember, the ID that we want to grab is this p tag here, which has an ID of addition. I'm just going to copy that and paste it into the string here. And then we want to do dot inner HTML. And we want to set that equal to num1 plus num2. And this num1 and num2 is referring to the two things that we're taking in as parameters here. And don't worry if you're not getting parameters right now. When we actually use the function, then you'll see how that works. So for now, we'll just save this and head back.
But then the question is, what exactly are these two values? Or what's supposed to be received over here? There aren't any actual values. And if that's what you're thinking, you're right. There are no values given to num1 and num2.
So when we're creating this, you can think of a function as a prototype basically. So we're just making a model of what the function looks like. We're not actually running it right now. And that's why we don't give any actual values here. When we're actually running the function, like if down here, I type add numbers and I use my brackets here, then inside of here, that's where we have to give it actual numbers. So inside of here, I can't type num1 or whatever. I have to type actual numbers like 3 and 5. And if I save this and head back to the browser, you can see that now it says 8 here, because 3 and 5 is 8. If I type 5 here, 5 and 5 is going to give me 10. So if I head back, it'll say 10 here. So that's why up here we don't give actual values, we just give names here. And you can think of these names the same way as variables. Actually, they are variables. We're creating two variables here. And then when we actually use the function, that's where we put the actual values in place of those variables. So I hope that makes sense.
Yet. This is just the declaration of this function. The time when these are actually allocated.
So I'm going to skip forward here.
Just add two values. That's it. This is how you're going to call. You send two parameters. Allocate. This code is run. Okay, let's save this and refresh it in the browser, and there we have it.
Okay, so here I called the function down here, but he called the function at the top, which is the same thing. I just prefer to write it down here. We call it after we create it. If I were to delete it from here and I wrote it up here, it would still work fine, like it'll still say 10 here. But it just looks a bit weird to call something before you even create it. So that's why I put it at the bottom. But same thing whether you put it at the bottom or the top.
We've got a 12. Now just to see that this function is working correctly, let's change the values. Back in our code, change this to a 10, and we're expecting a 17. Refresh, and there we have it. We've got a 17. So what you've seen here is a function that you actually can send data to, and the function works on that data. Now, the data that you send to functions could be numbers, and it could be text also. You could send inside there some text, and the function will work on that text and give you some feedback based on that text.
Okay, so I'm going to click next here, and I think we made it to 50%. So I'm going to actually end the stream here. Before I do, if you guys have any questions, make sure you leave them here. But yeah, I'm going to end the stream now, and then we'll do the other 50% of this week's lessons later on. So there'll be two parts to the stream. This is part 1, and part 2 will be coming probably later on tonight. If not, then I'll definitely do it tomorrow. But for now, my voice is starting to go again. So yeah, I think I'm going to end the stream right here. So thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.